Welcome back again to another episode of Economic Preppers. I'm your host, as always, Jeff here. I'm here with Dylan. How you doing today?
Hanging in there.
Literally hanging in there. We'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
Patrick, were you here there as well? How you doing today?
I'm just spinning around like my head cut off.
Kind of like that coin in the background there that's spinning.
I know. I love that thing.
That's cool.
All right. Dylan, I heard you had a little bit of a mishap the other day. You want to share with our audience just a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it was quite a mishap. I was snowboarding. I took a tumble, and it was a great day. And then this is my left wrist. You can see the dark part you can see my bone, and then you can see all the screws in there. So I crashed, and immediately I knew that I broke my arm because it wouldn't really move, and I couldn't open and close my hand. So I had to figure out how to get off the mountain, and did that. And then I get to the urgent care, and they were like, check me in. And then they were like, yeah, so we can't actually help you here. You need to go to the ER, and it's in the middle of a blizzard. And the ER was, we had to drive through the most dangerous section of I-70 where I'm at. So I had to find a ride to the ER. And then they go there and they put me in this, you remember those Chinese finger traps?
Yeah.
So they have a device where they basically have them hanging. And so they put them on your fingers. They're metal ones. So your fingers go in, and they put a weight on your elbow to gravity pull that down on the arm. So gravity will straighten out and realign the broken bone. So they did that to me for 15, 20 minutes. And the doctor comes and messes with it. He's like, I can't get it back into place. We're going to have to send you to emergency surgery. So yeah, that was my day yesterday. Then they took me to emergency surgery. Surgery went well. They put a bunch of screws in me, and now I'm just on the road to recovery. So I guess, yeah, it's been an ordeal, but I'm happy to be here. And the big lesson is just things can happen in an instant. So it's just important to obviously be prepared. Don't be scared. Go out, live your life. Because sometimes things happen, you have no control over them. But if you're prepared and ready and have a good positive mindset, you can get through most things. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the show, or unless you guys have questions.
Well, we're glad that you're back in one.
No, I just think that you should have learned a different lesson. The lesson I learned when I broke a bone is you call the ambulance, you ask them for a lot of drugs, and then you don't remember any of the ride because you just tell them for as long as you're conscious, there's only one thing on your mind. You should be staying at all. More meds. I need it. More meds. And then at some point you don't remember the ambulance ride. Your wife is no longer mad at you, and no one's screaming anymore. And you get back home. You should be put under. You should never have remembered any of this hanging with your bones broken thing.
Yeah, I wish I had that lesson, but I didn't. I snowboarded down the mountain myself with no goggles, at least to the gondola.
No.
My phone wouldn't work. It was a process, but I'll remember that for hopefully never the next time. But if it ever happens again, I'll remember Patrick saying more meds.
Yeah, just always, if you can remember anything, if you can talk, if you can see, if you can hear, just say more meds. I feel it. It really hurts. Just keep saying it really hurts. No matter, even if you can't feel anything, if you're awake, it really hurts is all you should be saying.
Well, they have specialists in the hospital to come in, and they're trained on how to identify someone who's someone who's just asking for more meds because they want them versus someone who's asking for them because they need them.
Then you always ask, Dylan, I'm going to help you out, right? The way to get into the ER quickly is when you get there, one time, this is a true story. My son, he had hives, and I guess his eye was really having an allergic reaction. So I called ahead and I said, hey, my son is having chest pain, and he's having difficulty breathing, and there's something wrong with his eye. You always say chest pain and difficulty breathing, because then they just get you back in immediately to triage you. They don't deal with that stuff. So just say lots of chest pain, difficulty breathing. When he showed up, they were like, what's going on? He's like, my eye. They're like, you having chest pain? He's like, no. You okay with breathing? No, we're good. Yeah, he's better now. It's just his eye. So can we get that looked at? Sure enough, it was allergic reaction. Dad stopped freaking out. He got him there quickly, and I lied. I'm sorry, but I got my son what he needed.
I mean, that's not a bad tip, right? Because sometimes they'll just they'll keep you there waiting. When I showed up to the ER, there was a nurse there at the window, and she didn't even acknowledge I walked in. and I was just like standing there for like 5 minutes with my stuff, just like with my arm all like splinted up, like, and she didn't even say anything. But you know, with your approach, they'll get you in like that. So
yeah, especially if you're not working out, like if you're not used to working out, just run into the ER. Your heart rate will be up. You will be difficulty breathing. You'll pass the test. They'll take you right back. Just sprint in real quick.
That's I mean, that is good advice. Like to think about, like you don't think about that much, but like, you know, it's good to be able to get into the ER and get your problems addressed first. That's, you know, it's not a bad thing.
Yes, yeah, I agree, and I've been there waiting for a long time for ER, and it's they try and take the most critical people first, but you know, you see people sitting there for hours, and it's just not a good thing. But
we wrote the triage protocols in my old life, so
let's not keep the people waiting for our first story here. So our first story today is about the Bitcoin and ETF, and you know, a lot of us have been looking at the different things that are going on out there about the ETF and what are the potential gotchas of this with all these big companies getting involved. Now, one of our friends, Chris Rice at Rice TVX, put out a great video that I both Patrick and I retweeted out. Be sure and follow us. We have our Twitter handles up here in the yellow bars. But he shared this great video, and it was basically a collection of 2 different interviews from Whitney Webb. And it just basically said the quiet parts out loud of course, they're gonna get another ad. Thank you, YouTube. So here's Chris in the video, and he did a great job with Whitney Webb talking about the different potential gotchas. And there's been a few tweets out there that they mentioned, but basically the takeaways, I'll go over the tweets real quick, and then we'll go over the takeaways. But there's been tweets out there like that. I saw this on a different video that there's potential about, here's one possible scenario about BlackRock, another big entity getting involved, that they could go out there and eventually deploy a fork, and then there could be adoption of that fork, and then Bitcoin is basically usurped and taken away from the people who want it and have it out there. That's what Whitney Webb was talking about. There's another post about like this is buried in one of the BlackRock ETF filings, that the sponsor has the discretion to determine which network should be considered the appropriate network in the event of a hard fork. And then there's also people that are mentioning this, and I know it's a little bit larger here, but all these different applicants for the Bitcoin ETFs, you'll see the name Coinbase on the right very often, which is going to be they're the custodian of all the Bitcoin. So that's a concern that basically Coinbase is becoming the bank. That's the brand new bank. And then lastly, this came out today. This just shows more evidence of how big this is getting. Bitcoin has overtaken silver to become the second largest commodity ETF, because in just about a week's time, it's now twice the size of silver as far as ETF. So I'll stop sharing a little bit and get back to us conversing about this.
Yeah.
And so, guys, what do you guys think about? I mean, is this FUD out there? Are there real concerns? Should we be concerned about these big boys getting into Bitcoin? And is Bitcoin going forward, or at some point in the future, not going to be the same tool of financial freedom that we all hope and want it to be?
Oh man, I guess I'll start off on that. You know, this is going to happen. It's going to continue to happen with Bitcoin, right? Because it's a network that is decentralized. No one entity can control it, and you know, it's been out there. And so these larger entities, as they're getting in, like their mindset is, how can we control this, right? How can we exert more force and more control of this network that is, you know, uncontrollable, right? How can we have more influence? And especially if people are moving towards that network, and more people are, they're gonna want that. They're gonna deploy various techniques and strategies to try and wrestle that control of the network from a decentralized control system to a more centralized control system. So they're gonna do that, and I believe that Bitcoin will survive all that, and I hope that it survives all that. But what's going to happen is they're going to deploy more sophisticated attacks against the network. So you mentioned a soft fork there, and the fact that these ETFs are out there in the first place from these large, credible institutions. You know, so that is a way where they can position themselves for an attack, right? They can get in the right position so when they want, or if they want, that they can basically take over or commandeer the network to suit their wants, needs, and desires, versus like the founding principles and ethos of the network already. But with that said, they can try, but they have to win. And if they don't win, the punishment for trying an attack like that, to trying to seize control like that, it can be really, really dangerous for them, because we know with Bitcoin, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, you can self-custody the Bitcoin. And we've seen numerous examples of large institutions with a lot of smart people, with a lot of wealth, with a lot of resources in the past that have tried to play this game to control and manipulate Bitcoin. And when they get called on it, they get called hard and they collapse like that. And so, that's a risk that these companies are taking if they try to fight and control Bitcoin. So I do think there's a lot of FUD there, but I do think there's a real risk and consideration to understand that they are deploying these tactics and strategies to potentially try to wrestle control of the network. Do I think they'll be successful? I hope not, and I don't think they will be, but there's still a possibility that somehow, some way they could. But I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there, and I'll hold my tongue for the back end of this. But Patrick, as you're the resident expert on Bitcoin from being a full-time miner, you got the white paper hanging up in the office. What are your thoughts here about the potential here of BlackRock's and Coinbase's corrupting Bitcoin for now or the future?
Yeah, they can't. I mean, it's just that simple. They can try to play games with the market. They can. Basically what they're doing is they're playing off of investor sentiment. Truly, that's all they're really doing. Because when I look at Bitcoin, when I look at the health of Bitcoin, there's a metric that I look at that drives what I believe is happening with Bitcoin, and it's the hash rate. What we see now happening is indicative of what has happened in the last cycle. If you guys have heard me talk about this before, we talked about the miners who get ready to liquidate their Bitcoin and sell their miners because there's new miners coming out. Dylan, you and I are going to be going just next week to Iowa, and you're going to get to see firsthand what I'm talking about here as we get some new miners online. And again, you'll see that there's a lot of us who are dumping the old equipment, dumping Bitcoin, and getting ready for the new wave of miners, because we know that the supply reduction is coming, which means we have to work twice as hard to get the same amount of results. At the end of the day, there's nothing that they can do. The hash rate keeps growing. That means the network is going to keep getting more and more decentralized. To be able to attack a network as it grows with that kind of strength, it's just becoming even more negligible of like a proposition as time goes on and as we start seeing the hash rate get distributed by many people. And then again, they also don't understand how the Bitcoin consensus protocol works and how the BIP process works. So I think there's a lot to be said here that all we're really doing is just increasing the volatility, the higher highs, the higher lows, more liquidity, and bigger actors. The whales that used to be whales are no longer going to be the whales, because you're going to have the BlackRocks of the group who now are holding 200,000 Bitcoin that they purchased in the last couple of days. It's just been ridiculous. So at the end of the day, what they could do at best is maybe add a little bit more selling pressure and drive it down, but that's okay. Us miners are really okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about it. Some of my thoughts, I think that you're right, Patrick, about this, and Dylan as well, about the strength of the network. The Bitcoin isn't going to change. Bitcoin, the people that protect Bitcoin, the miners, they know what's really going on. They've been involved in it. They're not going to allow it to be, the network itself to be corrupted. What my concern is, I think what a lot of people's concerns are right now that are about the community are the access and the custody and the knowledge of getting into Bitcoin for newer people. I think that we're going to see banks offering the custody for their clients and just say, hey, we can custody your Bitcoin if you want to get involved. Those kinds of things are the ones that, and that's where, economic preppers can really help the community to give back and provide guidance, as well as other people like Chris Rice and Whitney Webb and others that will speak up and say the quiet parts out loud. But this could be a way that, we're looking for these kinds of things of like, what could BlackRock do? Could Coinbase be playing liquidity games? Could they throttle you like another choke point 3.0 instead of choke point 2.0, where everybody's got they get out of the stock market, they get into the ETFs, but then when they want to cash out, they can't cash out unless they have to choose a CBDC or something else. So there are all these potential gotchas of the access points that they can control, and you have to be mindful of them. And that's what people like Economic Preppers is here to help you advise. And a quick testimonial about us. as I share this. This is our website, 30-second testimony here. This is economicpreppers.com. We offer these kind of informative discussions, and we can take them offline. We also have an Inner Circle here. Membership is available under the Inner Circle. You can go ahead and join us there and join our monthly AMAs if you want to get more knowledge, or we have coursework as well under the BYOB brand, Becoming Your Own Bank. That's certainly it's available to everyone. But let's get back to the stories here. The second story, we already seen one company that seems to be having an impact for whatever reason, and that is Hut8.
And now, I want to say something real quick before you
sure,
show,
go ahead.
Hut8. One thing that we're saying, and that is really important to take into consideration, and it takes like some mental shifting. Where we're at right now, with all these companies getting on board with Bitcoin, and with where Bitcoin's at, if you look at the past growth of Bitcoin, we're looking at a potential exponential curve, an exponential growth. And so what I'm saying is that the amount of money that's in Bitcoin right now is going to be drastically less than the amount of money that's going to be in Bitcoin in the future. And the amount of users that are going into Bitcoin right now, or that are in Bitcoin right now, are going to be drastically less than that are going to be going into Bitcoin in the future. And so that's the game these large entities are trying to play, right? They're trying to capture that new wave. And what Jeff said is spot on about the banks and these financial institutions saying, hey, we'll custody your Bitcoin. We'll hold it for you, right? And having them go through those channels so they can exert their control without actually fundamentally changing the network. Because if they onboard enough people through their channels and networks, right, they don't necessarily have to control the network fully. They can control the people, and they can control the people's access to the network. So when you're listening to this, and this is why we always say this, is not your keys, not your crypto, or not your keys, not your Bitcoin, to self-custody your funds so you aren't dependent on any sort of counterparty, and you're not beholden to whatever like rules or principles they come up with that they think are in your best interest, right? You're an adult. You're prepared. You should know what's in your best interest. And if you don't, you should do your research and figure that out. So I just want to say that that's a very important perspective to keep.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think that in general terms, the easier something is to do, usually the more they want you to do it. The powers that be want you to do it. So direct deposit, Zelling or Venmoing people, they want visibility of your transactions. Cash or self-custodying your wealth or buying gold and silver or Bitcoin, that's harder to do, but the rewards are that you have more control over your wealth. So just because something is easy doesn't mean it's the best for you. So again, a little caution about the ETFs, about like leaving your wealth there. We have to keep an eye on how things are treated going forward so that you still have access to your wealth. So great points all around. But our second story, getting next to it now, is about that one company that seems to be having a problem. And Patrick, you brought this up to us. This is Hut8, and they are a mining company, correct?
Yeah, so they pose themselves as a Bitcoin mining company, but truly they're not, right? They're also into the big popular AI space right now, and to me, they jumped on that. They jumped on a lot of the GPU mining. And as you guys know, that once Ethereum stopped becoming a proof of work and became proof of stake, you no longer need those GPUs for Ethereum. So what you saw with Hut8 is they tried to go and place their bets on other tokens and other strategies, and their cost of mining was too expensive that these guys basically just kept losing money. If you look at their profits and losses, they just had no ability to come back. They weren't like MicroStrategy where they were just buying Bitcoin. They weren't even like these ETFs where they're just holding Bitcoin, right? What they're doing is they're being much more speculative, and they lost because they're not really sticking to the true growth strategies of Bitcoin mining. And Bitcoin mining is really simple. You need cheap power and you need efficient miners. That's it. If you have those two, you win the game. And Hut8 tried to go into these other strategies that failed. And that's their fault. I mean, a lot of miners are down, but these guys are down 20-something%. And the funny thing is, today is the day they got their day on Wall Street. They got to, on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square, they were like, the bell ringing was today with them, Hut8, and then they tanked. So I think we haven't seen something like this low from these miners since last March? It's been almost 9 months since we've seen something like this.
Yeah, they've lost half their value, or almost half their value in 5 days. They've lost a quarter of it today. Not good signs there at all. So
even if you look at the last 1 year, they haven't been this low for quite some time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's a big retrace.
Well,
Wow.
there's a key point in here that Patrick kind of highlighted when he said they started diversifying and investing in these other coins and mining these different projects and things like that. And we talk about we of course love Bitcoin here, and so we talk about Bitcoin being money, right? Being the real money. And there's Bitcoin and there's everything else. And there's a common phrase in the Bitcoin space is everything divided by 21 million, right? So that Bitcoin would be the denominator for everything. So you can do these other activities and try to do these other mining strategies and stuff like that, and thinking that you're actually earning more Bitcoin. But unless you can actually custody that trade, whatever all the work and effort you did over here mining X crypto or whatnot, if you can't, you have to actually be able to trade that for Bitcoin and self custody that on the right time frame and the right time scale to actually own more Bitcoin doing that strategy. So that's one of the dangers with doing a lot of these things when if you're trying to move everything back into Bitcoin, is that just because you made a bunch of gains in project X doesn't necessarily mean that you can get those gains out of X and into the asset that you want to hold long term. And often what happens is people make those gains, they try to double down and get more, right? It collapses, they try to pull out, they try to sell, there's not enough liquidity, there's tons of fees and all that. And then during the same process, Bitcoin's also gone up. And so they end up making less or not much more than if they would have just bought and held or stuck to that Bitcoin strategy. So when you go down that route, you're taking on a lot more risk than you really know. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know a lot of people who say they regret holding their Bitcoin. And I could tell you that there will be almost nobody who will say I regret holding my Bitcoin very soon when we hit all-time highs again. So the reality is the only dumb thing that you could do is to sell your Bitcoin or to try to play the game and outpace the market. If you try to time the market, you're going to lose. Dollar cost averaging is the strategy. That's why mining is such a great way, because when you mine, you're dollar cost averaging every 10 minutes. You're always getting Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And all you got to do is pay that same amount of power every single month. And that power gets written off because it's an expense to your company if you have the right structure. So why buy Bitcoin when I can dollar cost average into making Bitcoin and write off the expenses in which I created?
Mm-hmm. And that's a way that's a more optimal strategy that you figured out that we're going to be sharing more about in the future on how you can look at the numbers on that. And you can see that and see if that works for yourself and how you can get involved. It's a really cool thing that you know about, Patrick.
Yeah, and I love Bitcoin mining.
Just to speak a little bit to our altcoin audience, so those who are really interested in other projects, or maybe Ethereum or XRP or other.
Hey, did I call that or not? I mean,
well, what I'm going to say is going to tie right into that, which is that Bitcoin is the money, yes, but the value of any project really gets back to Metcalfe's law. It's the network, it's the community, it's the decentralization. All of that is reflected in the market cap. As these projects grow, these projects have to grow in order for them to grow in value. You have more adopters, you have more coins, you have more stakers, you have more miners, whatever it is. Metcalfe's law, like the growth of the network is the strength. The strength of Bitcoin is the network itself. When people say that, what is the value of Bitcoin? It's not tangible. The value is in the tangible network. We have all these miners that are decentralized, all these validator nodes that are out there that are validating the transactions. That's the value of the network. That's very hard to replicate. But as other projects come out there, like Bonk or Shiba Inu, or even stronger ones like Theta or Matic, their value is in the network, and not just what they do, but also like as the people adopt it, that network grows. So you can outpace Bitcoin
that's
for a
the
while.
Only value, right? Because with Bonk as a meme coin, that is the only value. It's the greater fool theory. You're hoping that someone else is going to jump on the bandwagon and Bonk is going to go bonkers, right? That's the idea. But someone at the end, whoever's left at the end holding that bag, they're the greatest fool. So the idea is you get in early, even if there's absolutely no validity to the project at all, no use case at all. Meme coins sometimes will give you the opportunity. It's like, I don't play the lottery, I don't gamble, but I'll definitely buy a couple of meme coins, especially if I know some people are talking about it and there's buzz about it. The likelihood of it going from, $900,000 market cap coin to a $20 million market cap coin is pretty high when it's getting that much attention. So you start looking for those things, even if there's no value, just because someone else is going to want it.
but that just goes that, and that's a lot of people describe that as a pyramid scheme, and it essentially is. But again, the network effect proves that point. The more people that get involved in the meme coin, the faster it grows and the price goes up faster. And the only outcomes of those, unfortunately, are either it dumps or they change the core essence of the meme coin, like what they've done with Shiba and made there's now a Shiba army, and now what they may be doing with a coin like Doge. Doge could have utility if it gets adopted by X or Twitter, for example. That is still on the horizon as a possibility. So, but enough about altcoins. We have one more story that we want to talk about Wild Theories itself and things that are going on. This is going on this week. Not much media coverage over it. Not surprising about that, but there is a lot of wealthy and a lot of influential people, or so they think, that are meeting over in Switzerland this week. That's right. It is the annual Davos conference. It is the World Economic Forum. They're in Davos, Switzerland. And I don't know if you guys have heard how they get there. That's an interesting story as well. Apparently 150 private planes are flying into an airport that's over an hour away, and they helicopter over. So that's a great carbon footprint. But the theme this year is about rebuilding trust. That is the topics that they're talking about. And there's even a story over in Zero Hedge that was, we could talk about this one too, about a possibility of disease X could be coming out. That was discussed at the forum. And also Ecocide, which I won't get into as far as the details and the full title of this, but this was basically a rant by a particular woman who was saying that basically anything done against nature, from farming, from growing crops and taking them, or plucking fruit off of trees, or catching fish, is now ecocide. So the insanity just never seems to stop over the World Economic Forum. I don't even know where to go with this, guys. Patrick, what are your thoughts on the insanity that Mr. Klaus Schwab likes to trumpet these weeks? He's at a loss for words. That's unusual.
Because there's nothing good to say that would make me seem like a good human right now. Like I don't really have a lot of good words. Like, show up and find out what we think about that, guys. Like, we're Oregon. Like that's all we do: hunting, fishing. Are you kidding me? What do these people think they're doing? Like, I'm not that stupid. I don't speak stupid.
Dylan, what are your thoughts on this one?
I just was looking for my logical fallacies book that I have up. When the lady talks about anything that's harmful to nature, it's such like the naturalistic fallacy that you apply, that like being closer with nature is the optimal state, or the optimized state for whatever particular situation. And anytime you go against that, or what you perceive as being nature, that you're bad and evil, and you'll hear that thrown out a lot. It's obviously not true. It's a logical fallacy, because the logic doesn't always hold up that being like nature is going to be more successful of a strategy for you and your life or your goals. And obviously the fact that we exist here on the planet, right, that we follow human nature versus just like the nature that we see in the wilderness, our strategy is very different for that. And so that comment that you made in the beginning about the Davos Summit got me looking for that book. I need to pull that out so I can bring that up for future shows. But it's interesting. It's also interesting that they put all the comments and the commentary out on what they're talking about at Davos. And so I'm excited to see all the memes and the videos and the teardowns in the following weeks of the speeches at Davos. That's always an exciting time of year.
I feel like this is like the stupid people camp, where they talk about stupid people stuff that doesn't matter to us. And eventually they'll realize they have been wasting all of their time. Like, no one cares what they're saying at all. How are you supposed to earn back trust when we won't even listen to you? Like, I feel like we should be giving it even less time. Like, isn't this these guys are just insane, wanting to get us to eat bugs, and like they are playing this game, and that's why we knew this was coming. We're prepared. We have our food sources. Like, we know what we're doing. But I don't fall for this, not one bit, nor will I sit here and quarrel with the fools.
Well, the reason I pay attention to it is because the people that attend these conferences, including the media that pays to be there, this is where they get their directives that they go and try and implement for the next 12 months. So they're going to take that back to their countries and say, hey, we're told that we should be doing this. We should be talking about ecocide and we should be doing these things. But these are the kind of things that we need to be worried about and not necessarily worried, but wary, understanding that these things are out there as what they're considering trying to push down our throats. For example, I'll end with this story for today. I don't know where I heard this. I couldn't find a link to it just now. I was actually looking for it real quickly, but I heard in California that they are trying to, or they may have just passed this, but I think it's $1,295 to apply for a concealed carry permit. And that's just to apply for it, not just all the other licensing you have to do, but that's to go in California to get you concealed carry permit.
So that's the course, Jeff. They released a course, and that was released like in November. And it was a private California concealed weapons course. And it was really blown out of proportion there. But the reality is there is not really a good way to get a license in California. I mean, I've tried. It's hard. You have to know someone who lives there, who's a sheriff, local, who's willing to sign stuff. And you have to have a real business need. And it's not a right to have a firearm there. So at the end of the day, these guys, I like to put it very simply, like I'm a law-abiding gun-carrying citizen and I have a permit to carry a gun and I carry every day, everywhere I go, and sometimes multiple guns a day, and it's legal. I don't understand how they could even pretend to tell you that you can't carry one. Because for as long as I've been carrying one, I've never had the police ask me a single damn question. They've never come up to me and said, show me your license. Are you allowed to have it? Even when I'm driving a car and I get pulled over, they don't ask you anything. So to me, I don't even understand where they think that they're coming from. They just think we're all going to roll over and hand over everything we have and eat bugs.
They want those bug sandwiches. That's what they want to push. Coming to a McDonald's near you.
Guys, there are a lot of I would call them country boys in this area. I'm not even the guy you'd need to worry about. There are guys with much bigger trucks, tractors, semis. They're not going to be able to get anywhere close to us.
Well, this is why you really need to pay attention to what the laws really say or what our Constitution really says, because we have the right to bear arms. It's in the Second Amendment. That's why people talk about 2A. There's nothing in there that says you need a permit. There's not you need any legality to conceal, carry, whatever. It's in the Constitution. That's your right. However, they like to infringe upon it as much as they can or can get away with. So that's what people that don't know what the Constitution says think, that we live in a democracy. And we've all talked about that. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic, because in a democracy, you're like one step away from mob rule and pushing on minorities or individual rights, and you can step on those kinds of things. And you can't if you have certain rights protected in the Constitution. And people need to know the difference and what that really means.
Yeah.
So. All right. We've said a lot today. I know we've got lots of, we could probably sit here and talk for hours. We do talk for hours over at Economic Preppers. Please go out there and join us at economicpreppers.com. We do have that membership there. We'd love to talk to you and to have you join us and be on our AMAs once a month. But for now, I'm just going to pass it around one last time. Dylan, any last comments?
Oh, man. Just be prepared. Be prepared. Don't listen to the masses. Typically, if you're doing what all the masses are doing, you might be doing something wrong. So you should always question when you find yourself just spontaneously following a herd, right, or a crowd, or doing what everyone else is doing. It's like, is this my thought, or is this someone else's thought that I'm just acting out for them?
That's good advice. Patrick, what do you got?
I want to say hi to my favorite little listeners out there. Hey, Stephen and Nathaniel. You guys have been asking me where I've been, so here I am. I miss you guys too. But I do want to end with something very just simple piece of insight. By the time this comes out, you'll realize Bitcoin has been crashing for a little bit, and we would call it crashing. Quite literally, it's not crashing. We're back to where we were a couple of weeks ago. But what I am suggesting is Bitcoin's on sale. For you that have been wanting to wait and get Bitcoin, I wish Bitcoin would go back down. Here it is. Here it is. Stack sats.
Yeah.
And I'll close out by saying that, Have a community to bounce ideas off of. For example, if you hear a story like Patrick and I not talked about that gun story before, so it's interesting that he had perspective on it and knew about it already, and that some of it was FUD. It was fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So he could throw shade right on it and say that's not really what you need to worry about, but here are the things you do need to worry about. So having a community, having people you can go to as a reliable resource is important, which is why we really appreciate you guys joining with us and following us along, because we're here as a trusted resource and we're here for you guys. So if you have stories or comments or things that you want to ask about crypto, please reach out to us on all these different topics, and we'd love to hear from you. But for now, be prepared so you're not scared, and we'll see you next time. Take care.